Christmas in Kumasi was supposed to feel warm. The house was full of bright lights, red ribbons, and the smell of jollof rice drifting from the kitchen. Laughter echoed from the living room, but somehow the air felt tight, like everyone was holding their breath. Abina Mensa stood at the gate for a moment before going in, adjusting the strap of her simple handbag. She had come alone, just like she always did. She stepped inside quietly, holding a small wrapped gift. No fancy box, no loud entrance. Just Abina, calm and soft-spoken, offering gentle smiles as she greeted everyone. Her relatives were already seated, dressed in their best clothes, talking loudly over one another. Someone turned the music down. Someone else glanced at her and nodded. That was all. Abina took an empty chair near the end of the table. The Christmas decorations sparkled above her, but the tension at the table was hard to miss. Conversations felt forced. Smiles didn't reach the eyes. Plates clinked, forks scraped. It was the kind of silence that hides behind noise. Her mother barely looked up when Abina sat down. A few aunties whispered. Cousins laughed at something on their phones. No one asked how her journey was. No one asked if she was okay. Abina didn't mind. She folded her hands neatly in her lap and waited. She placed her small gift on the table, pushing it slightly forward. It looked almost out of place among the expensive bags and shiny boxes around it. Still, she smiled to herself. Abina had learned a long time ago that quiet people often carry the heaviest stories. Outside, the night in Kumasi was warm and calm. Inside that bright house, Abina felt a chill she knew too well. But she sat there peacefully, breathing slowly, unaware that this Christmas would change everything. The moment everyone settled at the table, Abina's mother cleared her throat, the way she always did when she wanted attention. Her face lit up with pride as she turned toward Efua, the younger sister, sitting confidently beside her husband. "Let us appreciate this girl," she said loudly, smiling wide. "Efua has really made us proud this year." The room came alive. Heads turned. Smiles grew. Someone started clapping, and soon the whole table joined in. Efua lowered her head shyly, but her smile said everything. Her mother continued, her voice rising with excitement. "A new house in a good area. A new car parked right outside. A husband who provides. This is how life should move forward." Aunties nodded in agreement. Uncles tapped the table approvingly. One cousin whispered, "She's really lucky," and another replied, "She did well." The praise flowed easily, like everyone had been waiting for this moment. Efua laughed softly, enjoying every word, every clap, every look of admiration. Abina sat quietly at the other end of the table. She smiled too, gentle and controlled, her eyes calm. She brought her hands together once in a soft clap, then rested them back on her lap. No one noticed. No one looked her way. Her mother went on, comparing years, milestones, and achievements as if reading from a list. When Efua said she wanted more, she worked for it, she said. She didn't waste time. She didn't delay her life. Some people glanced around, already knowing who those words were meant for. Abina kept smiling. She stared at her plate, listening to the sound of praise being poured onto her sister. The jollof rice grew cold, but she didn't rush to eat. She had learned how to sit through moments like this without reacting. It wasn't new. No one asked Abina how her year had been. No one asked where she had been traveling from, or why she was alone. No one asked about her job, her struggles, or her dreams. It was as if her life had paused, invisible in the middle of all that noise. The conversation moved on, but always circled back to Efua. The house, car, the future. Each word felt like a small reminder of where Abina did not stand in their eyes. Still, she nodded politely whenever someone looked her way, offering a soft smile that hid more than it showed. Inside something stirred. Not anger, not jealousy, just a quiet ache. Abina wasn't bitter. She wasn't ashamed. She simply felt unseen. As laughter filled the room again, Abina lifted her glass and took a small sip of water. She breathed in slowly and let it out. She had survived bigger storms than this table. And though no one noticed her silence, Abina knew one thing for sure. Her story was far from over. The laughter hadn't even settled when Abina's mother leaned back in her chair, clearly enjoying the moment. She laughed loudly, shaking her head, then pointed her fork toward Efua. "Look at her," she said proudly. "Your sister has bought a house. A whole house of her own." She paused, letting the words sink in, then turned her eyes slowly toward Abina. "And you," her mother continued, still laughing, "when will you finally settle down?" For a second the room froze. Then it exploded. Laughter burst out from every corner of the table. Some people laughed openly. Some covered their mouths. Someone slapped the table. An uncle repeated the question like it was a joke of the year. "Yes, oh Abina," he said, chuckling. "When are we attending your housewarming?" Abina felt the sound crash into her chest. Her smile stayed on her face, soft and polite, the one she had practiced for years. But under the table, her fingers curled tightly together. Her hands began to shake, slow at first, then harder. She pressed her palms against her thighs, hoping no one would notice. Her heart raced, but she kept breathing. She looked around the table, meeting faces that were full of amusement. No one looked concerned. No one thought the words might hurt. To them it was just laughter. Just family talk. Just Christmas fun. Her mother laughed again, louder this time. "We are waiting for you, oh," she added. "You can't stay like this forever." Abina nodded gently, still smiling. She wanted to speak, to say something. Anything, but the words stayed locked in her throat. If she spoke now, her voice might break. And she refused to give them that. Efua avoided her eyes. For a brief moment, there was discomfort on her face, but it passed quickly. The attention was too sweet to resist. Abina lowered her gaze to her plate. The food in front of her blurred as her eyes burned. She blinked slowly, forcing the tears back. This was not the first time she had been reduced to a question mark. This was not the first time her worth had been measured by marriage, houses, and public approval. She remembered every sacrifice, every lonely night, every quiet win she had celebrated alone. Yet here she was, being laughed at, as if she had done nothing with her life. The laughter finally softened, turning into side conversations. Plates were passed. Drinks were poured. Life moved on. Abina lifted her head again. Her smile returned, calm and steady. But something inside her shifted. That line had cut deeper than anyone knew. And though she said nothing, a silent decision was beginning to form, one that would soon change the meaning of that laughter forever. As the noise of the dinner faded into the background, Abina's mind drifted far away from that table. She wasn't really in the dining room anymore. She was back in the years no one ever talked about, the years they never saw. She remembered the day she packed her small suitcase and left Kumasi with a heavy heart. She had dreams back then, big ones. She wanted to study more, travel freely, maybe even start something of her own. But life had other plans. The family needed help, and Abina was the one who stepped forward without making noise. Abroad, life was not soft. She worked long hours, sometimes 2 jobs in one day. She cleaned offices before sunrise and assisted in shops until late at night. There were days her body ached so badly she cried quietly in the bathroom, careful not to disturb anyone. Still she showed up every morning. Still she pushed through. Her phone was always close. Messages from home came often. School fees were due. Electricity had been cut. Hospital bills needed urgent payment. Each time Abina said the same thing, "I'll handle it." And she did. Month after month, money left her account and found its way back to Kumasi. She paid for Efua's education when no one else could. She sent money when her mother fell sick and needed treatment. She covered rent, groceries, and emergencies that never seemed to end. But she never announced it. She never reminded anyone. She believed family support didn't need applause. There were nights she ate instant noodles so she could send more home. Nights she stayed indoors while others lived freely, saving every coin. When friends asked why she hadn't bought land or a car yet, she just smiled and changed the topic. Back home, her family praised strength and success, but they never connected it to her. They saw results, not the hands behind them. They celebrated milestones without asking who helped make them possible. Abina didn't correct them. She didn't want praise. She wanted peace. She told herself it was enough to know the truth in her own heart. But sitting there at that Christmas table, listening to laughter at her expense, the memories felt heavier than usual. All the sacrifices, all the silent support, all the love given without recognition. They never saw the lonely rooms she slept in. They never saw the tears she wiped away before work. They never saw how much of herself she had given so others could shine. Abina lifted her eyes slowly. Her face was calm, but her heart was full. And deep inside, she knew something important. Silence had protected her for years, but soon the truth would no longer stay hidden. The dinner went on, but the warmth everyone expected from Christmas was gone. Laughter still filled the room, yet it felt sharp now, like it could cut. Plates were refilled, drinks were passed around, and the jokes kept coming, one after another, each one landing closer to Abina than the last. Someone laughed about how time was moving fast. Another joked about weddings and babies. Then one of the uncles, already comfortable and loud, leaned forward with a grin. He pointed his spoon toward Abina and said, "My daughter, you should really learn from your sister. Look at her life. Everything is settled." The table burst into laughter again. Abina felt the words hit her like a slap, but her face didn't change. She kept her posture straight, her shoulders relaxed. Inside, though, something tightened. It wasn't pain anymore. It was clarity. Her uncle went on, not noticing the shift. "This world doesn't wait for anyone," he said, shaking his head. "A woman must move with time." Some people nodded. Some laughed again. No one stopped him. Abina slowly lifted her eyes from her plate. For the first time that evening, she looked directly at the faces around the table. One by one. Her mother, her uncle, her cousins, her sister. Her expression was calm, almost peaceful, but there was a depth in her eyes that hadn't been there before. The room grew a little quieter. She didn't speak. She didn't argue. She simply looked at them, and in that moment something shifted. The jokes began to feel uncomfortable. A few smiles faded. Someone cleared their throat. Her mother avoided her gaze. Efua shifted in her seat. The uncle suddenly became interested in his food. Abina lowered her eyes again and picked up her fork. She took a small bite, slow and careful, as if nothing had happened. But inside her, a decision was forming, firm and steady. She realized then that no matter how quiet she stayed, they would always feel free to measure her life out loud. No matter how much she gave, they would still see her as the one behind. And waiting for understanding from people who enjoyed comparing was only hurting her. The dinner continued, but the mood had changed. Conversations became shorter. Laughter sounded forced. Everyone could feel it. Something was different, even if they didn't know why. Abina sat there, calm and composed, her heart steady. She wasn't angry. She wasn't broken. She was awake. And as she looked around that table one last time, she knew this Christmas dinner had already turned bitter. Not because of the jokes, but because she finally understood her worth didn't need their approval, and she was done shrinking herself to make others comfortable. The room felt heavy, and Abina could sense her chest tightening. She placed her napkin gently on the table and stood up without drawing attention. "Excuse me," she said softly. Her voice was calm, almost polite, the kind no one argues with. A few heads turned, but no one asked where she was going. She walked away from the table and stepped into the quiet hallway. The noise from the dining room faded behind her. The laughter, the clinking of plates, the careless words. All of it became distant. For the first time that night, Abina allowed herself to breathe deeply. She reached into her bag and took out her phone. Her hands were steady now. No shaking. No rush. She unlocked the screen and saw the message waiting for her. It was short, clear, and final. "Transfer completed." Abina stared at the words for a long moment. Her heart skipped, then settled. Everything she had been waiting for. Confirmed. The long process. Paperwork. Patience. It was done. She closed her eyes briefly, letting the feeling wash over her. Relief. Strength. Ease. No one in that house knew what that message meant. No one knew how much weight it carried. They had no idea that while they were laughing, her life was quietly moving forward in ways they couldn't imagine. Abina slipped the phone back into her bag and straightened her shoulders. She checked her reflection in the hallway mirror. Her face looked calm, her eyes clear. There were no tears, no anger, just quiet confidence. When she returned to the dining room, the conversation barely paused. Someone was telling a story. Someone else was laughing again. Abina walked back to her seat and sat down smoothly, as if she had never left. Her mother glanced at her briefly, then looked away. Fua was busy on her phone. The uncle continued eating, his earlier jokes forgotten. Abina picked up her glass and took a small sip. Her smile returned, soft and controlled, but this time it meant something different. Inside her, a silent decision had already been made. She would no longer carry other people's success on her back without being seen. She would no longer accept being the quiet one while others spoke her story for her. She didn't need to announce anything. She didn't need to defend herself. The truth was solid now. It didn't need noise. As she sat there, Abina felt lighter. The laughter around her no longer touched her. The comments no longer pierced her heart. Whatever happened next, she was ready. They thought she was just quiet. They thought she was behind. But Abina knew something they didn't, and very soon they would hear it from her own lips. The chatter at the table continued for a moment, light and careless. Plates were passed, glasses clinked, and a few more jokes flew over Abina's head. Then, as if the air itself had shifted, Abina spoke, softly, almost whispering, yet loud enough for everyone to hear. "Who do you think paid the down payment on that house?" The words barely left her lips when the room fell completely silent. Forks hovered in mid-air. Laughter died mid-sentence. Conversations froze. The sudden quiet felt heavy, almost suffocating. Efua's smile faltered. Her hands, which had been fidgeting with her napkin, froze. She opened her mouth slightly, but no words came out. Her confidence, so visible just seconds ago, disappeared like mist. Abina's mother froze mid-sip, the glass halfway to her lips. Her eyes widened, and her smile faltered, replaced by a mix of confusion and disbelief. She set the glass down slowly, as if holding it too tightly might shatter the fragile air between them. Uncles, aunts, cousins. Everyone looked at Abina now. Some exchanged nervous glances. Some leaned forward, curiosity replacing amusement. The energy at the table had changed completely. For the first time that evening, all eyes were on her. Abina didn't raise her voice. She didn't shout or demand attention. She simply sat there, calm, composed, with a steady gaze that carried more weight than any argument could. Her hands rested gently on the table, her fingers intertwined, and her eyes scanned the room with quiet confidence. She watched her sister shrink slightly in her seat, her cheeks flushing. Efua had always been praised for her accomplishments, but now the invisible hands that had supported her success were about to be revealed. Her mother blinked rapidly, clearly trying to process what Abina had just said. The pride in her expression faltered. Questions hung in the air like thick smoke, unspoken but undeniable. Abina's voice remained gentle, almost like a breeze. "Yes, the house. Car. Everything you've been applauding. Someone made it possible. And that someone is me." A ripple of disbelief moved through the table. Eyes widened. Mouths opened then closed. No one knew how to respond. The laughter from before had vanished completely, replaced by a stunned, heavy silence. For the first time that night, Abina's presence filled the room entirely, not as the quiet, unnoticed sister, but as the force behind the celebrations, the unacknowledged strength behind her family's success. And in that moment, everyone understood. Nothing would ever feel the same at their Christmas table again. Abina reached into her bag and pulled out a small folder, the edges worn from months of careful handling. She placed it gently on the table in front of her and opened it with calm, deliberate movements. Inside were printed bank statements, receipts, and confirmations, proof that left no room for doubt. She looked around the table, her eyes steady. "Every transfer you saw for that house," she said softly. "Every payment for the down payment, for the renovations, for the furniture." She paused, letting the words sink in. "It was me. I did it. Anonymously, so you could all celebrate without knowing who really made it happen. A faint gasp escaped someone across the table. Her mother's hand trembled slightly as it hovered over her wine glass. Efua's eyes widened, her confident smile faltering completely. She opened her mouth to speak, but Abina raised a calm hand, stopping her gently. "I chose peace over praise," Abina continued. "I wanted no applause. I wanted no thanks. I just wanted to help." She flipped a page, showing dates and amounts, each carefully labeled. "Every transaction, every account, every contribution. I never asked for recognition. I never demanded credit. I did what I had to do quietly, because family comes first." The room was silent now. Not a whisper, not a cough, not a fork scraping a plate. Even the hum of the lights seemed louder in the void that her words had left behind. Silence crushed the house in a way that laughter never could. Her mother's lips trembled. She blinked rapidly, trying to process the reality before her. The pride she had shown moments ago turned into a mix of shame, confusion, and something else, regret. Efua's hands covered her mouth, as if trying to swallow her shock. The new house, the fancy car, the celebrations, everything she had been praised for, had been made possible by her quiet, unnoticed sister. And now she knew it. Abina kept her voice soft, almost soothing as she said, "I never wanted to prove myself. I never wanted to fight for attention. I just wanted to support my family, and I did. Without anyone knowing. Without anyone asking." Some relatives stared at the folder in disbelief. Some couldn't meet her eyes. One uncle shifted uncomfortably in his seat, as if the air itself had turned too heavy to bear. Abina closed the folder slowly and pushed it toward the center of the table. Her hands were steady, her expression calm. She didn't shout. She didn't gloat. She simply let the truth stand there, undeniable, unshakable, and final. For the first time that night, Abina's presence was felt fully. Not the quiet sister, the overlooked one, but the one who had quietly carried the weight of her family's success, the one who had chosen dignity and peace over recognition. And in that silence, the entire room understood something they had never realized. The quietest people often hold the greatest power. The silence stretched on for a long moment, heavy and suffocating, before it finally broke. Abina's mother let out a shaky breath, her face paling. She pressed a hand to her mouth, then slumped forward slightly, as if the weight of the truth had physically pushed her down. Tears welled up in her eyes, spilling over as she began to sob quietly. Relatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Aunts and uncles began murmuring apologies, their voices rushed and nervous. "Abina, we didn't know, we're so sorry," one aunt said, reaching out, but Abina didn't respond. Others nodded repeatedly, words tumbling out in a jumble of regret. Some even stood, moving closer as if proximity could make amends easier. Efua sat frozen, her hands still over her mouth. The confident young woman everyone had been applauding for the past hour looked completely exposed. Her eyes darted around, avoiding Abina's calm gaze, filled now with a mixture of shame, embarrassment, and disbelief. She realized the credit for her house, her car, her success, hadn't been hers alone. Every compliment, every praise, every celebration had been built on her sister's quiet labor she had never noticed, never thanked. Abina didn't raise her voice. She didn't defend herself or demand an apology. She just stood up slowly, deliberately, letting her chair scrape softly against the floor. The sound echoed in the tense room. She smoothed her clothes and took a steady breath. "I don't need your apologies," she said quietly, her voice calm but carrying an authority that silenced the murmurs. "I never wanted recognition. I only wanted to help. And I did." Her mother sobbed harder, wiping at her tears with the back of her hand. She opened her mouth, probably to say something, but no words came. Abina's gaze swept over the room one last time, meeting eyes that avoided hers. Every relative knew they had been wrong, and every glance carried regret too late. Efua's hands fell to her lap. She lowered her eyes and bit her lip. The shame was real now, deeper than anything Abina's mother or uncle had inflicted with jokes or comparisons. Efua realized her pride had been built on ignorance, and nothing could restore the balance. Abina adjusted her bag on her shoulder and walked toward the door, calm and measured. Each step was deliberate, a statement of self-respect. She didn't rush, but she didn't hesitate either. The room remained quiet behind her, the air thick with the weight of truth. Words had been said, apologies offered, shame acknowledged. But it was too late to change the story she had lived, too late to erase the years she had sacrificed quietly. As Abina opened the door and stepped into the night, she felt a sense of peace wash over her. The family's laughter, judgment, and comparisons no longer had any power over her. For the first time, she walked away knowing her value didn't depend on anyone's recognition. And as the door clicked shut behind her, the family inside realized something profound. They had waited too long to see the truth, and in that delay, they had lost the chance to truly celebrate the person who had always been their greatest strength. Abina stepped out of the house, the door closing softly behind her. The sounds of the family, apologies, whispered regrets, and awkward silence, faded as she walked into the calm African night. There was no snow, no glittering winter wonderland, just the warm, quiet streets of Kumasi, lit by the soft glow of streetlights and the occasional car passing by. The air was still, carrying the scent of earth and distant fires from neighboring homes. She breathed deeply, feeling the weight of the evening lift from her shoulders. For years, she had carried invisible burdens, expectations, comparisons, and the quiet labor that no one noticed. Tonight, the truth had been spoken. Tonight, she had let them see the power behind her silence. And now she was free. Behind her, the house remained tense. Her mother sat frozen, the sobs having slowed, replaced by stunned recognition. Her sister stared blankly, still trying to process that her achievements had been built on Abina's quiet sacrifices. Relatives shuffled in their seats, murmuring softly, realizing the depth of what they had overlooked for so long. Abina didn't look back. She let the night embrace her calm, walking steadily down the quiet street. The world felt lighter. The stars above, scattered in the clear sky, seemed to shine a little brighter just for her. Her smile came naturally now, soft and unburdened, a smile that carried years of patience, resilience, and quiet strength. In that moment, everything became clear. The laughter, the comparisons, the judgment, they no longer had power over her. She didn't need validation, approval, or recognition from anyone at that table. She had already proved her worth, not to them, but to herself. And in the stillness of the African night, under the calm sky, she let herself smile fully for the first time that evening. It was not a smile of arrogance or revenge. It was a smile of freedom. They laughed at my silence. They mocked my patience. But that Christmas I smiled, because I no longer needed their approval.